Okay, let me start by asking you one question, regardless of what business you are running, if you're in SaaS, if you're not in SaaS. If you could start again and just take out your departments and your people, what skills would be required to make your chosen customers successful? And that's my biggest learn after 30 years, is that you should be not afraid of going back to that drawing board, okay? In the same way as in post-sales, customer success, it doesn't actually need to be a department. It doesn't need to live and breathe there. That's a mindset that's already shifting now. So in the situation in SaaS and in other firms that would do services and so on, the most successful growth is coming from companies that are sustainably and quietly rebuilding around customer outcomes. But you have to be brave enough to go back to the drawing board and ask, does our operating model really fit our customer base today? And it does mean giving up the old command and control paradigm. And it's humbling and it could hurt the ego. But the teams that are thriving, the companies that are accelerating, they're the ones doing that. In SaaS, that shift comes down to one thing, and that is that you should not need a CS team. And it kills me to say that, but let me explain. Somewhere between sales ringing the bell, they've got a new deal, and finance sending that invoice, there's a team with CS in the title, customer success, who are expected to magically fix a missold deal, if it's been missold, explain the product, run business reviews, hit a renewal target, and all for decisions they never made, right? And even when the deal is the perfect ICP fit and the customer is basically the most beautiful specimen in the world, CS still has to drive value realization. And so over time, there's this consensus that they're the lost luggage department. Now, if you think about it, in what world do we read that narrative back and find it completely unsustainable, right? And then we're in this narrow view mind of the companies we work with and we talk to. But when we look outside, the ones that are growing efficiently, instead of adding more sales headcount and just praying, they're doing something very different. They're rebuilding the entire operating model around their chosen customer success, not around a customer success department. It's not the department, it's the discipline and it's the design. And that design itself starts with a better question, right? What would we need to make our chosen customers successful? Not who owns churn, not who owns the relationship. That's where the muddle happens. And the answer is to turn customer success from a team into an operating system, a connective tissue that runs through the whole business and joins things together coherently around the customer outcome. And the problem has been, for years, we've thought of an org chart as boxes. Sales owns revenue, product owns roadmap, marketing owns pipeline, CS owns churn and value, and we want to add revenue and we want to seat the table. And when you look at that little setup there, it's odd to be saying we're going to pay someone to own churn. Oh, and they also need to own revenue. And then we kind of go, well, what are our sales reps doing again? What's account management doing? And it's no wonder we get into this muddle. It's no wonder that there's confusion around it. We're paying someone to own a problem that starts at go to market. And almost nobody stops to ask the real question, which is what's required from a customer to succeed. This question I've heard more from actual SaaS customers, from vendors. And they say the same thing. If you don't know that, how on earth are you running an organization? Because if you look at how real growth happens, not in SaaS, but in customers of SaaS, it's not new logos at any cost. It's expansion from customers who are actually getting value. And it blows my mind that we're struggling to get there with SaaS. So even if your product today is difficult, is a difficult one to achieve that objective, the reality is still that by getting to that point of asking those big questions, it pushes customer success into a more ambitious area. It pushes it into a blueprint of how the company works. So think of customer success less as the team that does X, Y, and Z, QBRs, relationship, etc., and more into an operating system, like how we define success with a customer, how we design product, how we price and package our product, and how we decide which customers to sell to, and also how we know whether what we're doing is actually working, hence the going back to the drawing board part. So once you see customer success like that, it stops being a function and starts being a lens, and it becomes a company capability. And to prove this point, if you go and do the research, we've seen this same movie before. Like, we've seen this happen. You'll remember the quality department. That was once a thing. And their job was to catch everybody else's mistakes. And then Six Sigma turned up. And we realized, actually, you can't really bolt quality onto rubbish processes. And so quality stopped being a team and then became part of how everybody worked. And then with innovation, we had the Chief Innovation Officer. And for some reason, it just turned into something out of Google in the old days. Excuse me. And innovation that doesn't touch the core business is just pantomime, right? So innovation became everyone's problem, right? Embedded in the product, the go-to-market, the operations, even embedded in finance, right? And customer success as a department is now fully standing in that same doorway, and perhaps has done for quite some time. So many organizations, and what you're seeing changes in today, is they decide to either keep it as a team that owns renewals or adoption, or they can let it become something that it really wants to be, that the customer wants it to be, the operating model for how we grow. And that means the customer gets a better deal. And when you do that, when you wire the company around the customer outcomes instead of departmental tasks, two sets of results clearly show up. For the customer, it's just a different experience. There's a lower total cost and just less faff, and more automation and fewer manual workarounds, because the loop is closed fully across the board. Better security too, because they're using the product properly and not improvising. Faster digital transformation for them, which is difficult for a company to do any form of transformation. But a real competitive edge as well. Lots of firms that buy from companies like this often say, we didn't just buy SaaS, we run differently now. For you guys working in SaaS, retention is going to be way easier because you just have all the triggers for it to do it. Expansion becomes more about what next rather than please sign this order form. And references tend to fall out more naturally as a result of just organically drop out of the use cases. You don't really normally have to ask when you're operating in that way. So growth becomes more predictable, not because your spreadsheet is clever, but because your customers are succeeding on purpose, not by accident. So when you ask, what would we need to make our chosen customers successful? You're not being fluffy or customer-centric. You're laying out a hard-headed growth strategy, and it's a great exercise to go and shopping list those out. And if you then fast forward a few years and you get this right, which many customers or many software firms and other businesses are there right now, you just find that the organization, account management, sales are all built around customer success practices. And strategic decisions start with what outcomes are we enabling for which segments. And that allows you to then share KPIs across product, sales, CS, and services, one North Star. As a result, expansion just becomes a receipt of the value delivered. And leadership and board members stop asking you about what you are doing in order to grow ARR, and more what customers hit the outcomes that we promised, because that's the oil fueling the machine. And at that point, customer success, the label becomes pretty redundant. It's just how the business works. So I get asked this a lot, is all this customer success stuff just bullshit? And the answer is no. The team as we know it, if you require a team, will change shape. Some work will move into sales, some into product, some into ops. But the discipline of customer success, the designing and delivering of customer outcomes becomes the architecture that everything else plugs into. And the companies that are winning, observedly, and from data, and for the next decade and so on, won't be the ones shouting the loudest about customer obsession and customer centricity. They'll be the ones who quietly treat customer success the same way as we ended up treating quality and innovation, right? Not as a department to throw problems at, but as a discipline, a mindset. And I've seen these operating models for a long time, and it's how value gets created and shared, and those are the businesses that earn the right to grow with their customers, not just build them, and their customers feel the same way. So if your board is still asking, why do we need customer success? The honest answer might be so that one day we don't.